Hello and welcome to this special discussion on the deteriorating air quality index in the national capital and the adjoining NCR. It's not a new thing, I know. It's not a new thing. It's not news anymore. Something is that we need to look beyond. What are the reasons? How can we counter it? What are our responsibilities? Where does the buck stop? All these things. To look beyond, today we are joined by Vimlendu Jha. He is an environmentalist and founder of Swecha India. Vimlendu, thank you so much for speaking to One India.
Thank you, Pankaj. It's a pleasure indeed.
Pleasure. Vimlendu, as I mentioned, this whole brouhaha over the air quality index at times takes the debate away from the core issue. In your opinion, what are the primary sources that are driving this alarming rise in pollution levels across Delhi and NCR, first of all? And how can immediate measures target these contributors effectively?
See, first of all, I'll answer the last question that there's no immediate measures. As in, it's high time that we actually go beyond band-aid solution to problems like air pollution, and therefore we should not focus on immediate, because what happens that immediate solution or chasing immediate band-aid solutions is the main problem also. But coming back to your first part of the question, which was about what are the main sources. So largely there are two sources of pollution, or two categories of sources of air pollution that we talk about in Delhi NCR. One is the perennial sources of pollution, which is basically, by perennial I mean pollution that happens throughout the year. Right. So vehicle pollution, for example, almost 25 to 30% of the contribution to ambient air quality, or in terms of pollution, is of vehicular pollution, be it the private cars that we're talking about, or the trucks that we have, or other vehicles, or it could be the two-wheelers that we have in lakhs in Delhi NCR. Second main source of perennial source of pollution is dust. And when we talk about dust, then we're talking about construction demolition dust, and also the roadside dust. So we're actually looking at Delhi is always under construction, or Delhi and NCR, there's always some form of repair that's always on, where the authorities, be it private authorities or government authorities, remember to dig the road, but they don't remember to actually plaster it back, or fix that pavement, or fix that cabling work that they've done, or similarly the demolition or construction activities that keeps happening. And the third source, the perennial source, is open burning of garbage, be it the roadside burning of garbage, the landfills that are constantly on fire that we are talking about in Delhi NCR, be it in Ghazipur or Bhalaswa, or in Okhla or in other places. And then there are also in Delhi NCR region, there are industries and there are thermal power plants in a 300-kilometer radius. And these are the 4-5 sources of pollution. That is the main main cause why Delhi's AQI on an average is almost 200 to 250. Indeed, now when we talk about, every time there's a conversation around air pollution, the most convenient argument that is put forth, even irresponsibly by the Supreme Court of our country, is that Parali is the main source. And so, we have to understand that other than the perennial sources, there are periodic, occasional, episodic sources of pollution, and open burning of Parali that we're talking about, or farm fires that we talk about, or the firecrackers that will take place in Diwali or in Dhanteras or otherwise. These are episodic sources of pollution that makes the situation worse. But the moment you build your entire narrative of the problem and the solution only around the episodic sources of pollution, then you're doing a grave injustice to the actual problem, which is the lack of public transport, which is lack of governance around dust management, be it the roadside dust or construction demolition activities. Then we're doing injustice to in our understanding of open burning of garbage. So these are the varied sources. And by the way, this is not just, a lot of times the conversation is of Delhi's AQI. It's a regional problem. AQI, air doesn't have a political boundary. As in, imagine, in fact, farm fires of Lahore actually pollutes the air of Amritsar as well. So it's not as if, we can actually seal our boundaries, national boundary or interstate boundary in that sense. So that's the problem. A lot of our focus in terms of air pollution governance has been in those immediate, solutions to find, be it creating these smoke towers or switch on, switch off. These are mostly PR gimmicks rather than ecological long-term solutions to a grave public health crisis called air pollution in Delhi-NCR.
Vimlendu Ji, I would definitely say you have touched upon a lot of aspects which are very much there, staring at our faces as we speak. ऐसा अक्सर देखा गया है जो एक ह्यूमन टेंडेंसी है, if we can put a human or an inhuman face to this pollution, we don't react until the problem is knocking at our doorstep. ये बार बार जो आपने पीरियोडिक समस्याएं बताई, चाहे वो दिवाली हो चाहे पराली हो, जो एक खास समय पर होती हैं और कुछ कंटिन्यूअस सोर्स ऑफ पोल्यूशन होते हैं. At this point of time during this year, normally AQI starts making headlines in the winter season. Do you believe that there's some sense of apathy also? And I'm not just talking about government apathy. I'm talking about our communities, our own neighborhood and backyard. Do you think that that is also something that needs to be looked into and to be worked upon?
Absolutely, Pankaj ji. So if you look at in many other countries, many other parts of the world, when the air quality index reaches 200 or 250, the cities are shut down. Cities are evacuated because it is considered to be completely unsafe, especially for the elderly, pregnant women and children. And here we are, as I'm very, very sure the next week, the air quality index will actually be crossing 999 in several parts of Delhi. It's already 450 in various parts, Anand Vihar and many other parts, the 13 hotspots that we talk about. But we have normalized it. For us, as in this is just a number, when the entire document, the media or the scientific community or the doctors tell us the impact, long-term impact that it has in terms of life expectancy, be it, or how 1 in 3 children in Delhi are actually suffering from some pulmonological disorder or the other. So your life, your morbidity and your mortality both gets affected. But we as a society, and it gets very convenient for the government also, because then the government doesn't have to really feel embarrassed about it. As a society, we have normalized 400, 450, 500 AQI. So there is civic apathy, there's almost ignorance, and also we speak up, or we at least pretend to speak up only in the month of November when the pollution is visible, because of meteorological conditions. We need to understand that it's not as if suddenly the pollution increases, there's more farm fire, or there's more vehicles that have been brought into Delhi. It's just that because of meteorological conditions and geographical disadvantage that Delhi has, and low wind speed that we talk about right now, the direction of farm fire and the wind from the northern states, a lot of those factors, a dip in temperature, those are the factors because of which the AQI, which otherwise is around 250, 300, and in other times of the year, the pollution gets displaced. So pollution displaces as much, pollution बह जाता है, उड़ जाता है. तो हमें लगता है pollution नहीं है, अभी geographical और meteorological conditions के कारण विस्थापित नहीं होता है, तो हमें ये दिखता है, और उस समय हम थोड़ी बातें चर्चा करनी शुरू करते हैं.
ठीक, बिल्कुल. ये इसी पर मैं आऊंगा. I was visiting the banks of River Yamuna from the Kalindikund side, and just as a precursor to pollution, there is Yamuna froth that makes headlines. Unfortunately, it makes headlines at the same time of the year when Chhat Puja comes into picture, और फिर वहां पर मीडिया का जमावड़ा होता है. हम भी उसका हिस्सा बने, हम भी वहां पर गए. Vimlendu ji, let me tell you, I wasn't able to stand there for very long. We spent around a couple of hours there speaking to the people, the young volunteers and others who had come there to take a quick look at what is the scenario. ये जो मुझे यही रियलाइज हुआ कि जब तक हमारे दरवाजे पर एक कांस्टेंट प्रॉब्लम नहीं आती है, एज अ समाज के तौर पर भी और सरकार के तौर पर भी, हमारा ध्यान उस पर नहीं जाता है. इट्स अ वेरी लॉन्ग शॉट टू हैव एयर पोल्यूशन एज वन ऑफ द इलेक्शन इश्यूज. ये भारत में होने में बहुत समय लगेगा, जबकि आपने बहुत सही कहा कि इन अदर पार्ट्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड if the air quality touches 200, I mean, people stop their vehicles, they come to cycling, even if they have to travel. तो उस तरह की स्थिति आती है. मैं आपसे यहाँ पर ये जानना चाहूंगा कि in your opinion, what could be the message, what could be the steps that you and I can take, at least, to curtail it, to counter it?
पंकज जी, सबसे पहले तो ये समझना बहुत आवश्यक है कि पब्लिक समस्या का प्राइवेट सोल्यूशन नहीं ढूंढना चाहिए, बिकॉज वो डिससर्विस है. क्योंकि जिस तरह का हम प्रॉब्लम, अगर यमुना में की जो सिचुएशन की हम बात कर रहे हैं, उसको हम और आप एक दो बाल्टी पानी डाल करके नहीं ठीक कर पाएंगे. अगर हम कहते हैं कि 7 से 8 हजार पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट का डेफिसिट है दिल्ली शहर में, तो हम और आप डीटीसी के बसेस ऐड नहीं कर पाएंगे. कोल थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स हम और आप ऑपरेट नहीं करते हैं. सब्सिडीज अगर फार्मर्स को देना है ताकि वो उनको इंसेंटिव्स बढ़े ताकि वो फार्म फायर्स नहीं करें, वो हम और आप नहीं कर सकते हैं. So largely, I think we need to really understand the first part that you rightly said, that we need to make this a political issue, make this an electoral issue, which is unfortunate. इसके ऊपर नहीं हो रहा है, लेकिन इसके ऊपर चर्चा हो रही है, इसके ऊपर जिम्मेदारी फिक्स नहीं होती. लेकिन वो समय आना बहुत आवश्यक है, क्योंकि ये अब इकोलॉजिकल प्रॉब्लम नहीं है सिर्फ. This is no more just a romantic environmental crisis that environmentalists write about and speak about and discuss it in conferences. It's actually become a public health issue, because every second household has an asthma patient or a cancer patient or intestinal disorder or gastro disorder person. So when you have a public health crisis which affects your overall performance and overall life expectancy, then the government better take cognizance. Of course, the only institution in the country that has taken somewhat cognizance of this, which is not its responsibility primarily, is the courts of our country. Like, governance is not part of it's not the job of the Supreme Court or the high courts of our country. But anything that we see that has happened in the name of environmental governance in the country in the last 20-30 years is primarily because there's a danda from the courts of our country. चाहे वो सीएनजी की बात हम करें, या अभी हम सीएक्यू के बारे में बात करें, ग्रैप 1, ग्रैप 2, ग्रैप 3 के बारे में बात करें, तो ये सारे जो मुहिम चले भी हैं, प्रेशर भी अगर हुआ है, तो कोर्ट्स के कारण हुआ है. तो हमें इसका अगर सोल्यूशन ढूंढना होगा, तो एक कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव, कोलैबोरेटिव, सिस्टेमिक सोल्यूशन ढूंढना पड़ेगा. इसके लिए हमें सबों को, सरकार तो हम और आप बचाव कर सकते हैं. हाँ, मतलब मैं अगर मान लीजिए कि मुझे अगर सांस लेने में तकलीफ हो रही है, तो मैं सरकार के किसी एक प्रोग्राम का इंतजार नहीं कर सकता हूँ, क्योंकि मैं पता नहीं वो 10 साल में सरकार जगेगी या नहीं. सो लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स वी से दैट unfortunately if people who can avoid exposure to air pollution, one should do that. But again, ये बहुत ही एक elitist concept है कि हम घर से नहीं निकले. मतलब हम और आप मान लीजिए कि हो सकता है अभी जूम पे बात कर रहे हैं, हम वर्क फ्रॉम होम कर सकते हैं, लेकिन एक रिक्शा वाला और एक दूध वाला और एक सब्जी वाला, एक खेतीहर और एक फैक्ट्री में काम करने वाला, वो वर्क फ्रॉम होम का उसका नहीं है. तो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ पीपल कांट, जब सरकार की एडवाइजरी आती है कि वर्क फ्रॉम होम कीजिए, अवॉइड कीजिए, भाई उसका फिर फाइनेंशियल लॉस क्या होगा? कंस्ट्रक्शन एक्टिविटीज आप ब्लॉक कर देते हैं, और जितने भी लाखों जो वर्कर्स हैं जो सड़क पे आते हैं, और हर एक दिन की कमाई से उनका खाना पेट भरता है, हम उनके लिए उनको हम कंप्लीटली बोलते हैं कि पोल्यूशन के नाम पे यू विल बी ब्लॉक्ड फ्रॉम योर बेसिक सोर्स ऑफ लाइवलीहुड. सो वी विल हैव टू रियली लुक एट दिस फ्रॉम द लेंस ऑफ एनवायरमेंटल जस्टिस also, because pollution affects the poor the most. हमें लगता है बहुत बार कि यही हवा तो है, सब तो एक ही, बहुत ही यूनिफायर है, एक जैसा है सबके लिए, चाहे वो प्राइम मिनिस्टर हो या फिर कोई रंग हो, एक ही हवा. नहीं, वो बात नहीं है. हमारे जो अमीर हैं उनकी हवा अलग है, गरीबों की हवा अलग है. एक्सपोजर टू एयर वो अलग है. दूसरा, एक्सपोजर टू the remedies when you are actually suffering because of air pollution, there also there is a problem of environmental justice. Poor people don't have access to an air purifier, don't have access to work from home, don't have access to luxury of going to a fancy hospital and get themselves treated. There's a ward that's been made in some of the government hospitals right now, and last year as well, called pollution ward. So there are ICUs for pollution, which is good. But again, that can't be, आपको end of pipe का solution नहीं ढूंढना है, आपको beginning of the pipe solution.
बिल्कुल,
एब्सोल्युटली. बिगिनिंग में आपको, हम प्रदूषण करें और इसके बाद उसके ऊपर हम छिड़काव कर दें. यमुना में भी जो अभी हो रहा है, वो एक यमुना केमिकल से कंप्लीटली टॉक्सिक रिवर में आप फिर से केमिकल डाल रहे हैं, और पानी से उसको आप का फवारा देकर के उसको you're hiding it. The main problem of Yamuna is the perennial pollution or the quality of water that actually exists, and not necessarily the froth. Similarly, in air quality, it's not the smog that you see, it's the air that is affected, and not just necessarily the visual is not should not be the only alarming statistics for our citizens. It should be the quality of air and quality of water.
Absolutely, Vimlendu. It gives me immense pleasure, to have spoken to you, to have understood that there are so many people and voices who are very seriously approaching this, and media plays a very vital role, and it should be asking the right questions and promoting the good deeds done by lots of youngsters whom I met during my visit to the banks of River Yamuna. Definitely. One final question. I see Swechha India is what you are the founder for. स्वेच्छा स्वच्छ से भी जुड़ा हुआ है, और स्वेच्छा जो है, जब मैं कह रहा था वेयर डज द बक स्टॉप, मुझे लगता है कहीं ना कहीं हमारी जो एक जिम्मेदारी है। बताएं स्वेच्छा के बारे में, स्वेच्छा इंडिया के बारे में।
स्वेच्छा स्व इच्छा हमारी अपनी जिम्मेदारी, और जिम्मेदारी पर्सनल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी विच इज इंडिविजुअल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, और साथ ही साथ कलेक्टिव सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, दोनों के ऊपर बात करता है। पिछले 25 वर्षों से अलग अलग मुद्दों पे, चाहे वो वायु प्रदूषण हो, यमुना के इश्यूज हो, उस पर हम काम करते हैं। और 2 तरह का अप्रोच है हमारा। 50% हमारी एनर्जी जाती है कोलैबोरेटिव solution to these crises, which is where we work with young people, work in schools and communities in terms of finding solutions to many of these problems environmental problems or climate change related problems that we're talking about, be it through research, awareness, or hand-holding work or exposure work that we actually do. And the 50% of our energy also goes in somewhat confrontation and asking those difficult questions of people who are responsible for it, because in a healthy civil society, it's very, very important that we just don't become status quoists, but we'll have to break the status quo. And that's where Swechha takes pride in playing that role of being advocate and asking those hard, difficult, uncomfortable questions of the government, of the courts, or of people in power. That's what Swechha does through the year.
बिल्कुल, we have to walk this road ourselves, और स्वेच्छा स्व इच्छा जैसा आपने बताया, बिन खुद जले न हो तो जाला, कुछ इस तरह की स्थिति है। जब तक आप खुद नहीं उतरेंगे, you won't be able to give the clear picture. Vimlendu ji, an environmentalist and also founder of Swechha India, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद वन इंडिया से बातचीत करने के लिए। We end up learning more from you and people like you.
Thank you, Pankaj. It was a pleasure indeed.
Thank you.